Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. I'm Andrew Musgrove, joined by John Gibson for another episode of Let's Talk About. This week, we're going to focus on Sandro Tonali and ask the question whether he's the best we've seen when it comes to Newcastle United's midfield. I know that's a question that will no doubt cause a little bit of debate, but that's what we're here for. So make sure you get into the comments and leave us your thoughts on that question. A big thanks to Celia, our sponsors on the Everything is Black and White podcast. New eSIM service app brought to you by the creators of NORD VPN. Just download the app once and that's all you need to do. It's affordable. There's 24/7 support available as well. And if you're wondering why you should sign up to Celia, well, if you've ever been lost abroad or badly needed an internet connection with no Wi-Fi spot in sight, you'll understand what a difference a local SIM card can make. And that's exactly what Saley and the eSIM provides. It provides you internet connection wherever you are and saves you money on your roaming fees. So hit the link in the podcast description box for a discounted offer on your new eSIM provided by Saley. John, welcome back. If you were going abroad on your holidays, because right now you are on holiday, you could
Yeah,
have the eSIM provided by Saley, but you don't need one. But if you are going abroad, sign up. John, how are you doing? You well?
I'm good. I'm very good, my friend.
Fantastic. We spoke about Lewis Miley last week
Yeah,
and the future of that young man and whether he can break into Newcastle's first team. If he was, he would be going up against the likes of Sandro Tonali for a spot in Eddie Howe's starting 11. But it would be some victory for Lewis Miley to displace a man like Tonali, who I genuinely do think, John, might be the best midfielder I've seen in the past 30 years at Newcastle United.
well, I think he might be the best midfielder I've seen, and I've been with Newcastle United slightly longer than you, which is obviously easy to see if you look at the screen. But I mean, in my time, just off the top of my head, Andrew, in my time of covering Newcastle United, uh, literally off the top of my head, Hibby, Tommy Craig, Tony Green, Gaza, Jinky, Kieran Dyer, Jermaine Janis, Kabay, Johan Kabay. All chop midfielders. We've had some tremendous midfielders in our time at Newcastle, but and I don't like to judge a player until his time's up. Because when you do it in the middle of it, he might get even better than I'm generalizing, not meaning Sandro, might get even better than he is now. He might dip and not be anything like, etc., etc. So I like the finished article before I say it. But all those people I've mentioned, and by Jove, there's some talent there. I would put Tonali just about at the head of that list, which is saying something. And if I could explain perhaps why for older listeners that I would do that is Hibby leaps to mind as the great foil for Supermac, great vision, etc., etc. Was he better than Tonali? Well, Tonali's a regular Italian international. Hibby didn't get an England cap. Tonali Tonali's not with a lightweight country. I mean, Italy has some history of international football, so he's with one of the big hitters. So that's the case against Hibby. Tony Green, well, he only played 30 games for us, bless him. I mean, he had the possibility to be everything you could ever wish for. But injury came along, 30 odd games, hard to be the greatest ever if you've played that sort of time. Gaza, well, Gaza become one of the world's greatest players, if not the greatest player, but for injury. But Gaza's time was never with Newcastle United. He was the young boy at Newcastle United, not the Gaza that ran Italia 90. So if you take Gaza at Newcastle, then Tonali's got the edge on him. Jinky was the flamboyant guy, sensational, might be 1 in 6. Dyer and Jermaine Denis were no Kabay of local time, more recent time, quality player, probably our best foreign midfielder of that time, but I think Tonali is better than him. Tonali is certainly the best Italian midfield player we've had, Andrew, because I can't think of another one off the top of my head. But he is up, and I think he's top of the class. He is absolutely sensational. basically because he's got everything. I mean, he's got athleticism, he's got pace and power, he's got vision, he's got defensive nous and offensive nous. Now, normally, your midfielder is either a great sitting midfield player, i.e., a defensive one, or he's a great attacker. That is the two type of midfield players you've got. This guy arguably can do both those roles. He sits in front defending your two centre halves sitting in front of them at the moment. That's his new position. Or you can unleash him to go forward. And I tell you what, have you seen a harder shot than Tonali's got when he does go forward? It could belt holes in a steel. It is that ferocious. So he's got a bit of everything, and I have been so impressed by him. I think the world's at his feet. I really think it is, and he is going to have a position which is probably at the height of Newcastle's history. And Newcastle have been well served in midfield. The players I just mentioned, Andrew.
Well, there's two you haven't mentioned that are top of my list when it comes to midfielders, and that's Rob Lee and Gary Speed. And if you put those two players together, I think you've probably got Sandro Tonali in many ways, because Gary Speed was much more kind of that defensive midfielder who kind of sit back and sweep up, but he's fantastic in the air, but he would be box to box as well. Whereas Rob Lee was a bit more of a goal scoring midfielder, and obviously giving Newcastle United the best years of his career. What a servant he was. So those two are top of my list. And I think Sandro Tonali for me it is better. And it sounds rather strange to be saying that after just 57 appearances. I mean, some people will be saying, you can't be making this call, Andrew and John, after just 57 appearances, but we are making this call. Sandro Tonali is the best we've seen, but you can understand people's skepticism, potentially, John, after such
Of
limited
course,
time in black and
of
white.
course. Which is why I say I like to make my final assessment when a player's term at a club is over, so you can look at it in its entirety. We don't know where Sandro Tonali might go with Newcastle in terms of how great it might be, or that he might suddenly leave the club and it becomes a short period. You're absolutely right, by the way, with Rob Lee and Gary Speed. I was just giving those names off the top of my head. They are terrific and probably are better than the ones that I've mentioned. Different sorts of players. Neither of those two blessed with pace. The two you mentioned, but did they have other things that covered everything else? And if Tonali lives with them, then he really is doing something. But I think he does. And of course, how many games do you need? What's held Tony Green back in the ratings is that he only played 30 odd games before he got an injury. Tonali could become anything, but he's at the moment for to talk about him in the same breath as you talk about Lee and Speed and Hibby and Gaza is quite something.
It is. And given the fact that he missed 10 months of football due to the betting scandal that he was wrapped up in, it's quite something, isn't it, that because we only saw him for a limited amount of time before that all came to the surface, and then his ban was served. And yet Newcastle United fans, waved him off as if he was a hero. And I just want to get your thoughts on that, because I remember sitting at that game being rather amazed at the reception that he was being given. I know we all felt sorry for him, but the bottom line was he'd done something wrong and he deserved to be punished. But why do you think Newcastle fans took to him so quickly? Is it because what we'd seen in that limited amount of time, we knew there was a player there? And then for him to come back after 10 months and then be welcomed as he has been as well, there's just that special connection, isn't there?
Yeah, I think it's partially because they saw a player there and they knew that there was a player there. But I think they actually felt sorry for him. Here was a guy that had come over from Italy um, to play in a foreign country where he didn't know the language whatsoever. We all knew that he didn't want to leave AC Milan, and I don't mean that in any way detriment to Newcastle. He felt about AC Milan the same as Alan Shearer felt about Newcastle United. It was his club. He didn't want to leave. He had to leave for financial reasons. They needed the money. Newcastle knew that and took advantage of it. What they didn't know about was the betting situation beneath the surface. But he arrived here. He got off to a sensational start with a goal in about 6, 7 minutes against Aston Villa on his debut. I then felt he didn't do that great, before his ban, I'm talking about. He didn't do that great. And I also felt that he was struggling. He didn't know the language, he didn't know the culture. His body language told you that he almost didn't want to be here. And I think it was the heart pulling thing about leaving AC Milan, which was the club he'd always wanted to be. He never seemed to smile. He seemed to, as if he had the world on, worries on his shoulders, and perhaps he did because he knew something we didn't know, which was the betting situation, and that might arise. Um, and quite frankly, I think the ban's the making of Mandel. I think the ban is the making of Sandro Tonali. Would he have been as good without the ban? Would he have been still at Newcastle without the ban? Would he have totally bought into what Newcastle United are doing without the ban? I am pretty certain that we'll never know the answer, but that's so, because instead of the ban could have potentially killed him in this country. It could have potentially killed him. He could have come back to no impact whatsoever and been sold back to somewhere in Italy by Newcastle United. But he took that period. He saw how the fans were good to him, and the fans love an underdog. The fans love somebody that looks as if the world's conspired against him and that he's it's almost not his fault. Yes, it was. It was a bad thing um, for betting. So he did have a, but they sympathised with him, and it was seen as an addiction rather than something deliberate. And he suddenly thought, I'm loved here. The club treated him brilliantly during the ban. The fans treated him phenomenally during the ban. He'd made no reputation here whatsoever because he hadn't had the time to do so. And yet they chanted his name. They were warm to him when he met them in the street. It was nothing but love and affection. And he suddenly thought, by accident, I've fell into the best place it's possible to be, and I'm going to appreciate this, and I'm going to come back stronger and make a right go of it. The ban made Sandro Tonali what he is today.
I guess it's that kind of weight off your shoulders. It had all come out so he could get the help that he needed. And you're right, because he could have easily just gone back to Italy, said, I'll train in my own space, sort of thing. But what he did do was trained day in, day out, like he had a chance of playing on a match day, and obviously he didn't. But that was commitment to the cause. And look at the player he's become now, and he does look much happier since coming back to action. I guess that's because he's obviously now playing football. 28 appearances last season, John, as a defensive midfielder, and many people put Newcastle's kind of reset of the season down to Sandro Tonali being in that position for the first time against Brentford. And it was a big decision by Eddie Howe. It was something that some people had called for quite often. It hadn't happened, and for whatever reason, Howe said, "You know what? I'm going to do it now against Brentford." And from that moment forward, that's where Tonali played. He lasts 90 minutes for the majority of games. I think only maybe twice he came off before the final whistle, which shows his stamina. But do you agree, John, first and foremost, about that reset? Is that what changed Newcastle's season for the better?
Oh, yes, without a shadow of doubt, I think it was. There had been discussions openly that Joe Linton, Tonali, and Bruno individually were hugely talented footballers, but collectively mightn't play together. A lot of people said to me, "There's a same of the sameness in them. They do each other's jobs. They don't fit together like a jigsaw puzzle neatly into a three." And I think that looked the case. Joe Linton was always going to really be a left-sided player. But when Tonali was playing right side and Bruno in the middle, and you ask him Bruno to sit, Bruno hasn't got the discipline to sit. He's got the attributes to sit. He can do the job, but mentally he hasn't got the discipline to sit. He will always want to get on his bike and go. He could have played in the entertainer side because he had the Kevin Keegan attitude, Bruno. Let's attack. The minute he gets the ball, he wants to carry it and charge off into the wide blue yonder. The only trouble was he was supposed to be the defensive midfield player, and you looked up and you found him on the edge of their box, and you thought, wait a minute, when this breaks down, because Bruno's not the fastest, the blinking back door's open. What's going to happen back there? Now, Tonali is a disciplined footballer, and this is not a criticism of Bruno. It's playing to Bruno's strength. And what they did when they moved Bruno right and put Tonali centre and told him to do the defensive job, it it not only give us Tonali's discipline, it allowed the freedom for Bruno to do what he does best. So it worked, flipping the two of them worked beautifully. And you can always come out the back. I mean, Shaw does as a centre half, step out into midfield, and Tonali can step up onto the edge of the box on occasions when the cover's there, etc., etc. And as I say, the goal he scored from out wide. Did he mean it? Did he not mean it? I prefer to think he meant it, though I do believe he it was a cross. But it was a wonderful shot, and he had wonderful shots. The power on his shooting was as powerful as Shearer. I mean, I'm talking about the actual power. Forget, not chips, not well placed, or the power. He can keep the ball down, i.e., keep it between the posts, keep the ball down, and hit it with a viciousness that I don't think any other player at Newcastle United's got. I mean, Isaac's more about touch and temperament and making things happen, and he sort of almost passes the ball into the net. This guy is brute force when he gets a shot. And as I say, he's got a bit of everything in his makeup, and it's changed the situation totally. I mean, Italy have got the benefit. Italy football in Serie A, which used to be the best 30 odd years ago when people like Jimmy Greaves and John Charles and Dennis Law and were going to Italy, and Chippy Brady went and Graham Souness. It was the best league in the world. It is no longer that by any manner of means. Certainly, I would think straight away the Premier League, La Liga, Spain, Bundesliga is better. Um, and I think it's played at a sedate pace, Serie A these days. So that once Tonali got the training at Newcastle to get him up to speed in the 10 months off helped that, to get him up to speed to play our high press game and our all action game up and down, front and back. Uh, he became so fit and so good that when he goes away with the Italian team, all that you could hear was people being amazed at how fit he is and the running power that he had in the 90th minute for the national side uh, when others clearly didn't. And that's because of the training at Newcastle and Eddie Howe. He's super fit and they don't play at that pace. So he was running the show for Italy and getting rave reviews, etc., etc. And that's been the making of him as well. I think it's been a win-win situation for him and for us.
Indeed, and that kind of engine he's got on him, John, is one of my favorite attributes about him. Several times last season when Newcastle were in winning positions, and he just belts up the pitch and wins the ball back, and he always gives us all until the very last minute. He's absolutely superb. The stamina on the bloke is pretty much unrivaled. But I just spoke there about the reset that a lot of people go on about, and if you look back at the switch into defensive midfielder, which happened on the 7th of December against Brentford. Now, Newcastle lost that game 4-2 down at the G-Tech. He was probably the only positive out of that game. They went on to win the next 6 games before 4-1 lost to Bournemouth. And obviously in between that, there was the second leg or the semi-final of the Cup as well. But he has just been something special in that midfield. And I think you summed it up perfectly. He's made Bruno a better player. I also like the way the interchange as well. Yes, if you're going to put it in black and white, it is Bruno gets more advanced, Tonali sits back, but we often see them communicating, and if one goes forward, the other one switches, which is good, which is maybe something Bruno didn't do when it was his responsibility to sit in the middle. But yeah, that midfield three has been absolutely brilliant, and I just can't wait to see them again next season, John. And he's got the goals about him as well. You've mentioned his power when it comes to shooting. I just love that he's got everything about him. The ability to pick a pass, the ability to put it in the back of the net. He's got leadership about him as well. And he's only 25, John. That
Oh,
he hasn't got a ceiling, I don't think.
no. And one of the things, and I mentioned what I thought he had early on: athleticism, pace, power, etc., etc. And you have added other things that he is about. But another word that I think we can use with him and Marvel is anticipation. Defensively, he sits in front of the two centre halves. He anticipates where the trouble's going to be before it is. He looks at it and he knows that that's where the ball's going to drop, where they're going to drop the ball in to do us, and he's already on his bike going into that space. He puts out fires all over the park. You know, when the ball you go, ooh, because you see a pass go into space against us, and you think, oh, but who's just behind that? Who's coming into the shot? Tonali, he's seen he's anticipated where the ball's going, and he's in there snuffing it out. And not only does he snuff it out, but because he's got ability, having snuffed it out and got the ball, he's able to use it because he's got so much. And another thing I love about him is that 9 times out of 10, he looks to pass forward. He doesn't look to pass square or pass back. There's times you've got to pass square when everybody's sort of boxed off and there's nobody available. You've got to go wide. But so many modern day footballers now, because they know the statisticians are sitting on this touchline watching them, and they want complete rate, complete passing figures, and they don't want to be the guy that gives the ball away. They'll pass it short, square to another player, so it's not their fault if the ball's used. You don't win games doing that. You win games by taking a chance on the pass, and the killer pass wins you the game. And Tonali looks for that. He only goes square when that one's not on, but he looks for it. So many other players don't look for it. They play the safety first ball, and then you look at their stats, and you say, one of the reasons I'm not a great stats man. You look at the stats afterwards and say, "Do you realise he had 96% completed passes during that game?" Yeah, but 90% of them just went 15 yards square. What about the pass? It's the killer pass. It's going to kill off the whole team and open up something for your goal scorer. And Tonali will play them if he can.
Yeah, he looks to unlock the defense, doesn't he? Absolutely brilliant when it comes to picking that right pass. I mean, how lucky are we, John, that we have a midfield that has Bruno and Tonali in it?
Oh, extremely lucky. And when you think about it, yeah, is it luck or is it just that the manager's an absolute genius? Because the midfield we've got isn't the jobs that these guys were originally doing. I mean, Tonali was right side attacking and not doing that defensive job. Got the switch and has looked a sensation, and the bonus has been Bruno. And you look at the third one, Joe Linton. He was a very average centre forward until Howe made him a midfielder. So the midfield three in partnership has been created by us, isn't it? I mean, Bruno was asked to sit and didn't have the discipline. He's now going forward where he doesn't need the discipline. Tonali is sitting, and I think while he can play as an attacking midfielder, I still think this is the best position for him, not just for us, because he sits in the centre. He can see the whole of the game from that position in the centre of midfield, and he can dictate things. And Joe Linton is the killer. He's the man that goes round and muscles teams and bullies teams. So it's worked beautifully as a threesome, but it happened either by accident or, much better, because of Eddie's vision that he did that with Joe Linton and he did that with Tonali.
In terms of the midfield or the best midfielder in the Premier League right now, John, we've said that Tonali is arguably the best midfielder we've seen for Newcastle United. But at this moment in time, is there anyone better than him in the Premier League, do you think?
Great question, great question. And somebody will always come out with somebody that is. Well, but the great Man City midfielders were like David Silva and Bernardo Silva,
Kevin De
Gundogan,
Bruyne
Thomas
and
Pound, and Kevin Bruyne. But that was then, not now. That's why Kevin Bruyne's got a free transfer. That's why Bernardo Silva and Gundogan look to be replaced. Rodri's the best they've got, and he would probably be the Tonali type player, both defensively and offensively. So you would say Rodri is in there. You would say McAllister's probably in there at Liverpool. But we're talking heady company here, aren't we?
Declan Rice, perhaps? Is he up
Declan
there?
Rice would be the best Englishman in that position, certainly. But you're talking about that sort of category, and Declan Rice was 100 million, and McAllister's a genius, and Rodri's just won the Ballon d'Or. So you're talking about top of the range, aren't you?
We are indeed. And before we sign off, John, I would like you to give a message to our friends in the Italian media who are constantly trying to link Tonali back to Italy. I mean, it's not going to happen. We know it's not going to happen. He's come out and said he's happy here. He wants to repay the fans for their support, but the reports keep surfacing. So, John, fire away.
Yeah, it's quite simple. It's not going to happen because he doesn't want it to happen. You're behind the times. You realise what he thought of AC Milan when he left AC Milan. You still see Italy as God's own country, and I can understand that because we see England as God's own country. But as I said earlier in this podcast, you've got to face facts. Serie A is no longer the best league in the world as it was. The best league in the world's now the Premier League, and that is where Sandro Tonali is. And he's just won a trophy here, and he's made the Champions League. The fact you players now go to Italy when they haven't quite made it in England. Um, McTominay and Tommy Gilmore, who've just won the title with Napoli, and Lukaku, etc., etc. This guy is in his pomp. He will return to Italy, but maybe he might be 30 when he returns to Italy. He's not going to do it today. I think you can leave it alone. It ain't going to happen. Don't keep banging on about it because you're banging on an empty drum. And don't get bitter because we give you Lloyd Kelly. It's not our fault. You took him. This guy is staying where he is. He's got what he's got. He's loved as much here as he's been loved anywhere. The club have been loyal to him. The fans have been loyal to him. Sandro now wants to be loyal to the club and the fans. Let him do just that. Let him alone. Appreciate him when he comes home and plays for your Italian side because he is the heartbeat of that side. But don't try to bring him back to Serie A. He's better than that.
There we have it. And what a big season to come for Sandro Tonali as Newcastle United once again play in the Champions League, and he'll have a huge role to play in that alongside Bruno Joelinton and maybe Lewis Miley, as we spoke about last week. John, thank you as always for popping on to the podcast. To you guys watching, listening, you know what to do by now. Hit thumbs up, get into the comments, hit subscribe, leave us a rating and a review. And if you need your eSIM for your holidays, hit that link in the podcast description box. And for myself and John, we'll see you guys next week.